everyone, it's Shel C from PaperOcotilloStudio, and today I'm sharing with you a project I made for February for the GinaBAhrens Design Team. I will be making one of these every month on the third Tuesday. Yeah, the third Tuesday. So I'm starting out, by the way, the prompt for this month from Gina is beads, buttons, and charms. And I've always wanted to make paper beads, and I've never actually gotten around to doing it. I even have some really beautiful ones that people have sent me that I wanted to make into jewelry. I haven't done it yet. You know, I've always been fascinated with the concept, but never actually got around to doing it. And so Gina having this prompt this month kind of kicked me in the booty and made me do it. So I'm starting out with some of Gina's stencils and a stamp set. And these are from the new Modern Atomic collection. That's a really popular thing right now, and I'm not really sure how people decide what's going to be popular, but bam, suddenly there's all kinds of these atomic shapes from, and even on shows like I was watching Project Blue Book and I see wallpaper that has these type of shapes. It's like a trend and it's really cool. So I have a couple of her stencils in a stamp set and I'm going to use them today to make my project. So I'm starting out with some gel printed paper from last week. The one on the left is just roll-off paper, and the one on the right, it's two layers of stencils on the gel plate, and I thought it reminded me of that same type of an idea of these shapes that are specific to a time, but yet are timeless. So I'm taking the stencils and I'm using a color scheme to unify them. So I've put the colors in. I was going for kind of a southwestern vibe. I like these type of colors. And as you can see, I'm also making a piece of collage paper while I'm doing it by cleaning off the stencils. But I'm just using a sponge pouncer and I'm going over with these different colors. That I like, that I will wear, because I'm going to make this into a bracelet, which I will then wear. So I've got some of this bright aqua. I've got some kind of an orangey color, which is cadmium red light. And I've got some Naples yellow, which is a beautiful neutral color. And I even throw in a little bit of a darker teal because on the left side you can see there's some of that darker teal peeking through, and that was from when I was gel printing. And it's phthalo blue. So I put some of that in at the end. But first I'm just using the stencils, and sometimes I'm pouncing through them, and then now I decide that the reverse shape looks really cool if I turn it over and clean up the paint off the pounced side. And that doesn't really sound right, the pounced side, but you know what I mean. And get the reverse image, it's pretty cool too. So I'm just basically making my own paper that I'm going to make into paper beads. A lot of people make paper beads out of newspaper, out of text weight paper, with printing on it like from a book, out of scrapbook paper, out of magazine pages. All those are great. I just wanted my own color scheme. I wanted to be able to dictate which colors my beads were going to be. So by using these stencils and stamps and the paint colors I want, I'm getting exactly what I want. And this paper is a lightweight paper. It's from the printer. It's not anything heavy. Excuse me. It's, what you would print with your inkjet printer or whatever. It's also what I gel print on. I like having a lighter paper so that I can use it for collage, and it, sticks down better and is more smooth if I have a lighter weight paper. So I got out the stamp set as well. That's Modern Atomic number 6, I think. No, number 5. Modern Atomic number 5. And stamped over it with some acrylic paint. Remember, when you are using stamps and acrylic paint together, you need to clean them right away. So I made sure that I cleaned that phthalo blue paint off them right away. So then the next thing I'm doing is making basically like triangles out of the paper. So I started out thinking that a 1.5-inch long bead would be a good idea because that would be a good place to start. I've never made a bead ever. So I thought bigger would be easier to manipulate. So the first piece of paper, I'm cutting it on one end at 1.5 and then angling the paper so that by the other end it's completely just comes to a point. So then with the other piece I decided to make 1-inch beads. So I'm just doing 1 inch and of course making it down to nothing at the end to the point. So I've seen other people do this on video, and that's how I decided to do it. That's what I figured you're supposed to do. So then I bought this quilling set on Amazon that has these little tools for rolling up paper. And so that's what I'm using. You could also use a toothpick or something like that, some very small, thin rod to roll these up. It's more fiddly than you would expect. And my first one is completely wonky. It is ridiculous. It didn't come out right at all. So then I thought, well, maybe I cut the paper wrong. I wanted the top of the paper to be more centered so that by the end, the little tail part would roll up into the center of the bead. So I start fussing with it, trying to cut it, and eventually just decide that really the problem wasn't the paper, the problem was me and not paying enough attention to the tension. You need to keep the tension on both sides. And if you are rolling one side and not keeping a tension on the other side, then it rolls crooked. And so any triangle of paper will do as long as you are paying attention to the tension on both sides as you're rolling. And I also decided that the 1.5 inch was really not a place to start. You should have started with the 1 inch because it was easier to keep the tension on the 1 inch beads than it was on the 1.5 inch beads. Now there's all types of beads that you can roll. You can make them into triangles, you can make them into circles, you can make them into cylinders, you can have designs on them. I mean, there's a whole spectrum out there of doing this project and how to do it, and it's out there. I watched a video by GinaBAhrens. She showed all different types of shapes, and someday I will figure out, I will practice and make all those different shapes because it was a fun activity. It took a long time. It was fiddly, but I like the results, so I'll probably do more of it. But this was for the design team. This was for using Gina's products, and I wasn't going to, go too crazy. I was just trying to get a project. So now I'm rolling the 1-inch ones, and those are easier. But I guess you would call these, I don't really even know what shape this is. They're skinny on the edges, and then they're fatter in the middle. Maybe an oval, kind of an oval bead, I guess. And I end up using the 1-inch ones and saving the 1.5-inch ones for a different project because they're too wide after all. So I even used the excess paper on the ends that got cut off that was more narrow and made some even smaller ones. And I also cut one of the 1-inch papers in half, exactly in half, and made 2 1/2-inch beads, which I did use in the project. So then I figured out that I could zoom in my camera and maybe you could see what I was doing better. Just basically rolling them around that rod as tight as I can get and as even as I can get, and then putting a little bit of glue on the tail and gluing the tail down. So they're loose on there, and that's now become a bead. So I think anyone could do this. I think that you guys should try it if you haven't yet. I think it's a lot of fun, and I would definitely recommend making your own papers. Whether you start out with plain paper and paint it, or if you start out with some of Gina's projects and paint your paper with stencils or stamp with some of her stamps. They all worked really great. The colors turned out. All the beads are unique because they are from different parts of the paper with different colors, but they all coordinate because they're all the same colors. I think they're awesome. So then I'm just laying them out. You can see some are 1/2 inch, some are 1 inch, some are 1.5 inches. I'm thinking about making a bracelet at this point. So I'm trying to make sure, do I have enough beads? Is it going to work out? So then I decide that what this really needs is some copper splatters. because it's very southwestern colors and you need to put copper. There just has to be copper. So I splattered them with some copper paint and a fan brush, and then I've got this Deco Art triple thick glaze. This product's really great for putting a thick glaze over things. And I take a toothpick, stick it in the hole, and then paint the glaze on. I've also seen people dip them, but I was wondering, what if the glaze gets down in the hole of the bead and clogs it up? So I didn't want to do the dipping thing. I didn't think that was right. So then I'm just using a styrofoam. This is from a dollar store that is just for making flower decorations, and I'm sticking them in there to dry. Then I'm taking each one and dipping both sides into the excess copper paint. So now the tips of them have a little bit of copper on each end, just to finish the ends so that you don't see the rolls of paper. I thought it looked better. And then, so then that's my beads. Now, during the prompt, there was also a prompt for charm, and I like to make charms out of shrink plastic. So I thought I would add that into my project. So on the shrink plastic, I stamped some of the stamp set with StazOn ink, which is a solvent ink. Solvent ink to stay on things that are non-porous. That's your best choice, StazOn or another solvent ink. There's all types of inks out there. And then I have these sprays that I made using alcohol ink. You can see that's my alcohol inks. Then I have these little bottles, and all I did was put 91 isopropyl alcohol in the bottle and add a few drops of the alcohol ink to make these sprays. And I'm using them to color the plastic because I figured alcohol would stay on the plastic. Alcohol ink would stay on the plastic because it's also for non-porous surfaces. Plastic is non-porous, so it seemed like a no-brainer. So I colored both sides of the plastic, and I'm doing some stamping. I didn't know if it was better to color it first and then stamp, or stamp first and color it. So I did one on either side, and I decided that coloring it first with the alcohol ink spray and then stamping it was a better choice. But of course now it's colored on both sides. Then I was inspired by the shape that has, it's kind of a longer on the top, shorter on the bottom, sort of a oblong shape, kind of like a rectangle, but not exactly. So I decided to make my charm in that shape. And just cut the plastic, punched it with a crocodile. Make sure you punch it first, because if you forget to do that part, you won't be able to get a hole in it without a drill. And even then you might break it because it's kind of brittle. So then I shrunk it with my heat tool and used acrylic block to make sure it was very flat. And then I'm using this Mod Podge glaze stuff to seal it and make it shiny. And of course I have to do it on one side, let it dry, and then do it on the other side later. So that's how I made the little charm that I added to my bracelet. Now for making the bracelet, sorry guys, I am not a video person who makes videos of how to make jewelry. That's not what I do. I do make jewelry, but I don't ever video it. So the video is not very good. I don't stay in frame. I tried to have it to be zoomed in. Also, you can see it's the afternoon, so light's coming across my desk. So all I did was take a piece of leather cord, I folded it in half, thread it through a button so that now the button's on the end, and in the middle, this is going to be difficult. The button's in the middle of the cord, I tied a knot, and then I attached it to a plastic tray as a loom. You can certainly buy looms to do this type of a bracelet, but I don't own one, so I needed to improvise. So I'm using some bulldog clips, and I clipped the one end of the bracelet on one side, and then the two tails of the leather cord are clipped with two different bulldog clips on the other side, separating it so that I have room to sew this bracelet. And I will put a link, if I can find it, to a girl that I sometimes watch called Beautiful Nights making a bracelet like this. I've made several of them, and I think that I learned it from her. I think. So I'll try to find a good video of how to make this bracelet where you can actually understand what's going on, because I realize that my video sucks in this portion of it. But tie the beading cord up at the top several times on one side. Thread the needle, and then you go up through the bead, around and under and back through the bead, so that it's got two strings going over and under. Ugh, how do they make these videos so that you can actually understand? This is like tricky. And I needed to start with a point. So I started with one bead, then two beads, then three beads to make it wide enough to start with my 1/2 inch bead. So I put my 1/2 inch bead on there, under, through, around, and back under a couple times. Then I decided I was not going to have enough beads because I decided not to use the 1.5 inch beads. They were too wide. So I got out my bead trays and I found some other beads to add in, and it actually makes it a lot more interesting. If it had all been just the paper beads, it would have been much less interesting. So I'm glad that I did that. These are druk beads. That's an aquamarine color, which happens to be my birthstone. They're glass beads. And I think that the tiny beads, the seed beads that I used are 11s, and I think that these druk beads might be 4mm, but don't quote me on that. I'm not a jewelry video instructor at all by any means. And this bracelet is cute, but definitely not perfect, and I would never like sell it or something. So it's for me. It's my own personal one that I will wear. So I put in, I think, three. Okay, I got the 1/2 inch bead, then three of the 4mm druk beads, and then I was able to put in a 1 inch bead. So then my next one I had to put, I wanted to alternate everything, so I ended up putting some more of the 11 seed beads, and I think there's 8 across. Pretty sure there's 8. And then another 1 inch bead, and then I put in some peach colored. At some point I put in some peach colored druk beads, 4 across. And I just continue to do this, you know, alternating between the seed beads, the 1 inch beads, and the aquamarine druk beads and the peach colored druk beads, back and forth in a pattern, you know. Not random, but actually in a pattern. And I do this all the way across, and then finish the bracelet the same way by going down to 3 druk beads and then a 1/2 inch bead, and then 3, 2, and 1 on the seed beads at the end. And then I just tie it in a knot at the end and go back through and sew back through with the tails and tie knots to make sure that everything is real secure and won't fall apart. And then I just make sure that that last knot is big enough to go, there's a space big enough to go around the button, and that's how the end of the bracelet happens. So at the end of the video, you'll see pictures of the bracelet and me wearing the bracelet, and I'm definitely not a hand model. So it would be nice if I had a pretty hand and pretty wrist to wear it, but that's not the case. So that's how I made the beads. That's how I made the bracelet. That's how I made the charm. And then at the end, you will see me attaching the charm using some copper wire, and it's very off screen because it was zoomed. And yeah, I'm definitely not a how to make jewelry video person, but I did want to show you what I did with the beads that I made using GinaBAhrens stamps and stencils from the Modern Atomic collection, because that's what this video is about. I probably will not be making any more jewelry videos anytime soon. So this was fun. I really enjoyed it. I think the bracelet's cute. I will definitely wear it. I plan to wear it with a teal colored blouse that I have. I'll probably make some matching earrings using the shrink plastic. So here at the end is when I'm putting on the charm. I did make another charm using one of Gina's stencils, but it was too big. So I'm going to be using that and the 1.5 inch beads to make maybe some book bling. And Vicky made book bling on her uh, one that she did this month. So I'll be sure to link that as well, and the other design team videos that have come out so far in the description box below, as well as links to the products that I used on Gina's shop and the paint colors that I used and all that type of stuff, so that you can make this project if you would like to. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure to give me a thumbs up, comments, questions, share, subscribe, all that. And here come your close-ups. Bye-bye.